Father in heaven, thank you for your word. It is living and it is active. It is life and it is spirit. It is God-breathed and it is useful for teaching, correcting, rebuking. It's for training us so that we can be equipped for every good work. And we get so confused in life because really it's pretty simple. We are to love you with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength. We are to love our neighbor as ourselves. We are to fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. But we get pulled in all of these directions, and these temporal things seem so important. And so I just pray that you give us clarity, that you help us find our God-given purpose, and then live that out. And this morning, as we read your words, please teach us and guide us, transform us and renew us. In your name, Jesus, we pray. Amen. Well, this morning we continue our series on marriage. The series has been called The Two Shall Become One. And just think about that idea. I mean, I know we're into this, and so I say that every week, the two shall become one. But think, the two shall become one. When my best friend was getting married down in Nebraska, I got to be his best man. That was very nice. Got to wear a tuxedo and go golfing, fun things like that. So before the wedding, a few minutes before the wedding, he had the groom and his groomsmen come into this little side room. I should have said this. The daughter, or the woman he was marrying, her dad was a pastor. He'd been a pastor for, a lifetime pastor. Pulls us in the side room, and he's kind of talking to his future son-in-law, letting him know, hey, buddy, you better be good. But then he said this. He said, in just a few minutes, we will all go out there, and I will say some words, and you will say some words, and she will say some words, but God in heaven will move. He will take the two of you and make you one. And that's profound. God honors our choice. He gives us freedom, and then we make choices, and then he honors those choices. Wherever we get married, whether it's a Justice of Peace or Elvis in Vegas, God moves. He unites the two, and they become one. And C.S. Lewis says that whatever a culture's idea of what would validate a reasonable cause to get a divorce, every culture acknowledges that getting a divorce is different than just dissolving a business partnership. It's not something that you can just step away from. It's much more like an amputation. Whatever it is, it's more like something is missing, because the two shall become one. They are now one. And in every other area of life, if you have a bad arm, you don't say I think I'm going to cut this one off and just get a new one. You don't do that, because it's your body. The two become one. And in marriage, the two become one. And that's why it's so important that we reclaim biblical sexuality. That a man is a man and a woman is a woman, and they have their roles and they understand, because they were designed that way. God made them that way on purpose. When God saw that Adam was alone in the garden, he did something. He moved. He created Eve, and Eve became the grace of God in Adam's life. And Adam was the grace of God in Eve's life. And my specific title today is Life-Giving Water, because we're at the point in the Song of Solomon where they're going to get married. And he doesn't ever use the words life-giving water, but he talks about her being a fountain. And that's what she does for him. She gives him a reason to be strong. So this week, my wife had MEA weekend, and she said, we're going somewhere. So we went somewhere. We went to my mom's house in southwest corner of Wisconsin. And my mom said, let's go to Galena, Illinois. And I said, yay, because I love driving. No, I don't really. But how many of you have heard of Galena, and you know that it's famous because of, anyone? General Grant. So, and I love history. So we went on a tour of Grant's house, and we saw the little stores, and we're reading all the things. And quite a while ago, because I love history, I I had bought Grant's biography on Audible. This is Audible, and then you get to listen to a book. But I hadn't listened to it because it's 48 hours long. But now I'm excited about Grant. I want to learn about Grant. That's how fast my Audible goes, by the way. And so I'm listening to the biography about General Grant, and it talks about his childhood and how the woman that he admired most in all of the world was his mother. She was so important to him, but she was not an overly affectionate woman. She was more stoic and reserved, and so he didn't grow up with a lot of affection. In fact, when he was going off to school at West Point, his mom was like, "Bye, son," and then he went over and saw the neighbors, and the mom and all the daughters were crying. And he was like, "Are you sorry that I'm leaving?" Because he never experienced that kind of what is this? Why is there water coming from your eyes? And so as he's growing up, it's kind of a long story. I'll try to tell it very quickly. His roommate at West Point, they both ended up in the Army, because that's what you do when you're at West Point. And Grant ended up stationed outside of St. Louis, where his roommate's family lived. And his roommate said, "Well, I'm not there, but I will write to them. Just go visit them. They will feed you. They will take care of you." So Grant goes and he visits this family. And all the young daughters, they're like, "Oh, he's so handsome. Look at his uniform. He's amazing." And the little 6-year-old girl loves him, and the 11-year-old girl, and then the 15-year-old girl. But about 7 months later, the 17-year-old girl came back from school. And when he saw her, he was like, "Ooh." And they say it was love at first sight. And eventually, of course, they got married. But here's what's really interesting. When he was away at the war in Mexico fighting, he would write back to her and he would say, "You are my conscience." He says, "When I think about what I'm going to do, I think, what would Julia want me to do? And then I do that." She gave him life. She became his moral compass. In fact, it says that she believed in him more than he believed in himself. And much of what he became was because of one woman believing in him. Of one woman saying, "You can do this." Now here's what's interesting about Julia. General Grant, it says he thought of her as the perfection of womanhood. She was the perfection of womanhood. However, as a young girl, Julia used to cry at night because she wasn't pretty. And she told her mom, and her mom said, "That's okay. You can be my good little girl." And she wrote, "I enjoyed being her good little girl, but how I wished just once I could have been her pretty little girl." And in the eyes of Ulysses S. Grant, she was the perfection of womanhood. See, that's how this is to work. We are not created to be alone. We are created to love. We are created to be in love. We are created to build up and encourage. And this morning we are going to look at Song of Solomon 3 and parts of 4. Now, the chapter begins, remember, at the end of chapter 2, she's now feeling fairly confident because she knows that Solomon loves her and he's come after her. Her emotions kind of go like this, which is pretty common for a human being. But she's like up and she's down, and I'm not pretty, but I'm pretty, but don't look at me, and Solomon loves me. And so he wants to take her away and share life with her. Well, chapter 3 begins, and it says, all night long on my bed. It's like another little vignette in the story. All night long on my bed, I looked for the one my heart loves. Now, this is Hebrew poetry, and it's a love poem. So we're not really trying to understand exactly what's going on. Like, why is she in bed looking for him? She knows he's not there. She's not married to him. But you have to look for what's going on in the heart. All night long on my bed, I looked for the one my heart loves. I looked for him, but I did not find him. So you feel this desperate longing. It's like, whoa, where's he? Where's he at? I will get up now and go about the city. And it's like, well, it's the middle of the night. Why are you going to wander around the city looking for him? Because it's Hebrew poetry. So you see what is going on in her heart. She's desperate for him. There's a thing that Henry Cloud calls, I don't know if this is real beyond him, but he calls it emotional object constancy. See, object constancy is a stage in development where as a young child you learn that things exist even though you can't see them. That's why little kids, this is how you play peekaboo with a baby. Peekaboo. And they're like, oh, where'd you come from? Oh, he's gone, it's just a hand. Peekaboo. Oh, he's back, that's amazing. Peekaboo. And then somewhere along the way you learn, oh, he's still there. He's just behind his hand. That game. I mean, try this with a 15-year-old. Peekaboo. It's not as... Yeah, see, McKenna says no. So it's object constancy. We learn that things exist even though we can't see them. Well, emotional object constancy is when finally inside of us, love has taken root. And we know that we are loved even if we're not in the middle of, like a husband is gone from his wife and he's at work, but he's not worried, oh, maybe she stopped loving me because I left this morning. Because love has taken root in their hearts. And that's what has to happen. That's why when people start dating, there's no time for this root thing to happen. And a boy, he goes out with a girl and he thinks she had a good time because she was laughing and giggling and, rolling her eyes in a positive way. Yeah, because there's a negative way to roll your eyes also. But then he goes home and the date's over and he's like, oh, I wonder what she thought. And so then he's talking to his friends. This is what she said. What does this mean? Or he calls his sister. What is this? Because he doesn't know. It's not rooted in him. And so here's this girl, and they've had their first 2 chapters of courtship, but she's like, oh, where is he? Where is he? I don't know. I'm going to get up and go looking for him. And so she says, I will search for the one my heart loves. So I looked for him, but I did not find him. And the watchman found me. Now they're like, young lady, what are you doing out at this time of night? The watchman found me as they made their rounds in the city. Have you seen the one my heart loves? She's asking them. I can't find him and I don't know where he is and I'm desperate. Do you know where he is? Scarcely had I passed them when I found the one my heart loves. So, I guess it was a good idea to go looking in the middle of the night in the streets, because apparently that's where he was wandering around. But the point is, they are together now. She's okay, I can rest. I have found the one my heart loves. I held him and I would not let him go. It's like, you're not leaving me. I would not let him go till I had brought him to my mother's house, to the room of the one who conceived me. And I know you're like, what? That's weird. Why is she It's Hebrew poetry. It's the idea of, what is a more intimate place than the room your mother conceived you? And so she's taking him and she's not letting go because she's still uncertain. She still doesn't have his love deep in her heart where she knows beyond a shadow of a doubt that of all the things in the world, what he loves most is her. She doesn't yet realize that to him, she is the perfection of womanhood. And then chapter 3 goes on. Daughters of Jerusalem, I charge you by the gazelles and by the does of the field, do not arouse or awaken love until it so desires, because she knows how weak she is. She said in chapter 2 that she's faint with love. She so is in love, but she also knows it's not time yet. Do not arouse or awaken love until it so desires. There are things that are too big for right now. There's a story that Corrie ten Boom tells. Corrie ten Boom wrote the book, The Hiding Place. And when she was a young girl, she asked her dad, Dad, where do babies come from? And her dad said, Corrie, why don't you go over and pick up that suitcase? And so she went over, and it was a great big suitcase, and she's trying to pick it up, and she can't. And she's trying, and she can't. And she says, Dad, I can't carry this. And he says, yes, some things are too big for you right now. I will tell you about that later. There are things that aren't ready yet. And she says, do not arouse or awaken love before it's time, is literally what it says. Then in verse 6, it's their wedding day, because this is the next little vignette in the poem. And she says, because she does most of the talking throughout the book, Who is this coming up from the wilderness like a column of smoke, perfumed with myrrh and incense, made from the spices of the merchant? And you're like, what? What? I have no idea what I just read. Well, you have to look for the imagery. So here's this column of smoke. And yesterday when we were driving up from Wisconsin, we drive by that foundry and you see those huge fire plumes of just rising through the sky, cutting out and you're like, that's powerful. Here he is. Who is this coming up from the wilderness like a column of smoke, perfumed with myrrh? Because again, she's talked about how he smells multiple times. He's perfumed with myrrh and incense, made from all the spices. This is expensive cologne he's wearing. This isn't Old Navy. No, what's that? Old Spice. This isn't old. No, he's got the best stuff. He's powerful. He's strong. He's financially secure. He can take care of me. She says, look, it's Solomon's carriage. Now, she's talking about his car. It's like, yeah, look at the wheels he rides in. He's escorted by 60 warriors. So not only is his carriage amazing, you talk about strength and power and protection and safety. He's got 60 warriors. I'll be safe riding with him. 60 warriors, the noblest of Israel, all of them wearing the sword, all experienced in battle, each with his sword at his side, prepared for the terrors of the night. You don't have to be afraid. She just got done telling us that she went out walking the streets because she couldn't find him and it was dark and the watchman, oh, not anymore. She's got Solomon and his carriage and 60 of the noblest of Israel's warriors. Not just that, now she's going to talk about his carriage. King Solomon made for himself the carriage. He made it of wood from Lebanon. Yeah, that's supposed to be impressive. And you're like, that was impressive back in the day. You know, like, where'd you get your ride? Wood from Lebanon. Its post he made of silver, its base of gold, its seat was upholstered with purple, its interior inlaid with love. Daughters of Jerusalem, come out and look, you daughters of Zion. Look on King Solomon wearing a crown, the crown which with his mother crowned him on the day of his wedding. It's wedding day. See, that's how we know. She's saying, you guys got to come and check out Solomon. Look at his carriage. Look at the wood. Look at the silver. Look at the soldiers that are with him. You talk about an impressive man. She says, this is the day his heart rejoiced, because this is what he has been longing for. Then chapter 4 begins, and it's the wedding day, and now Solomon talks. And it's kind of interesting because if it wasn't for her, we really wouldn't know anything. Like she's the one who's been narrating this whole story. All he does is tell her she's pretty. That's like, if he was the only guy talking, it would be like, you're beautiful, you're beautiful, you're beautiful, you're beautiful. But he's going to say, how beautiful you are, my darling, because it's their wedding day. How beautiful you are, my darling. Oh, how beautiful. Your eyes behind your veil are doves. Your hair is like a flock of goats descending from the hills of Gilead. Your teeth are like a flock of sheep just shorn. Each one has its twin. Not one of them is missing. He's going from, he's basically, he gives the whole tour. Now, we're only in verse 2. Let's read verse 3. Your lips are like a scarlet ribbon. Your mouth is lovely. Your temples behind your veil are like the halves of a pomegranate. How many of you girls have ever once been complimented on your temples? Yeah. No boys ever come up and said, I just want to tell you this. Your temples are stunning. Solomon is paying attention. He writes this whole poem describing her beauty. In verse 4, your neck is like the Tower of David, built with coarse stones. On it hang 1,000 shields, all of them shields of warriors. We're going to drop down to verse 7. You are altogether beautiful, my darling. There is no flaw in you. You are altogether beautiful, my darling. There is no flaw in you. So Ulysses Grant, he said that Julia was the perfection of womanhood. Julia never felt beautiful, and one of her defects that she could never get over was she had a lazy eye. And even when she was the first lady in the White House, she never wanted a picture taken of her that could see her whole face. She always wanted to turn to one side or the other. But that's not how General Grant saw her. She was the perfection of womanhood. You are altogether beautiful, my darling. There is no flaw in you. How good would it feel to believe those words about yourself? Verse 8, he says, "Come with me from Lebanon, my bride. Come with me from Lebanon. Descend from the crest of Amana, from the top of Senir, the summit of Hermon, from the lion's dens and the mountain haunts of the leopards." I mean, he says, let's go. You have stolen my heart, my sister, my bride. You have stolen my heart with one glance of your eyes, with one jewel of your necklace. I love that verse. You have stolen my heart. I remember once my little girl, we're riding in the car, and and you know when you're a dad and you love your little girl, and I was like, oh, she has stolen my heart with one glance of her eyes, that little rascal of a 5-year-old. You have stolen my heart, my sister, my bride. He says, how delightful is your love, my sister, my bride. Now, about the sister thing, again, because that's a little bit weird. Later, she actually says, I wish that you were my brother, because then I could show affection to you in public. So it's the idea of intimacy. You have stolen my heart. How delightful is your love, my sister. How much more, my bride, how much more pleasing is your love than wine, and the fragrance of your perfume more than any spice. Your lips drop sweetness as honeycomb, my bride. Milk and honey are under your tongue. I mean, think about how much work he has put into telling her that she's beautiful and he likes her. Like, what's the longest any guy has ever described to any girl here that she's attractive? You know, because guys say, like, you're cute. Or maybe if they watched Wayne's World, they go, doon, 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 doon. Foxy lady. That's about all we get. Not much. He's talked about her temples, her neck, her hair, her teeth, everything about her. We skip some verses in the middle. He's making sure that she understands that everything about her, she is altogether lovely. She has stolen his heart. The fragrance of your garments is like the fragrance of Lebanon. You are a garden locked up, my sister, my bride, because she is only his. This isn't a garden this isn't a community garden. This is his garden. You are a garden locked up, my sister, my bride. You are a spring enclosed, a sealed fountain. See, what they have doesn't get shared with anyone else. It's theirs. It's theirs and theirs alone. They're the only ones. She is his spring. Verse 13, it says, your plants are an orchard of pomegranates with choice fruits, with henna and nard. And I don't know what henna smells like, but he keeps on with the poetic imagery of how amazing she is, how much he loves her. He says, nard and saffron, calamus and cinnamon, with every kind of incense tree, with myrrh and aloes and all of the finest spices. This is again him telling her how much he loves her and how beautiful she is and how wonderful she is and how she is his and his alone. You are a garden fountain, a well of flowing water, because she gives him the courage to go on. She gives him strength and energy. See, there's a reason that dads get up and go to work. There's a reason they do the things they do, because they have a family that they love. There's a reason that men go off and make something of themselves. In fact, I heard a comedian one time say that women are the reason men do everything they do. He said, you want to know why men go to the moon? To impress women. You want to know why men build bridges across rivers? To impress women. And then he said, you don't believe me? Try building a bridge. It's hard. But it's this instinct in them. That's why, I mean, okay, you know what one of the dumbest things I've ever seen in my life is? That cartoon where, like, the bad guy always takes a woman and ties her up on a train track. Like, why? Are you trying to kill her? Just kill her. But it's because, well, the hero has to come and save the day. It's the damsel in distress. And apparently it was a very popular cartoon because it was on TV forever and ever and ever and ever. I don't even know what it is. But it's this thing that is awakened. I don't remember who wrote this poem, but there's a famous poem that goes like this. I could not love thee so. It's about a soldier going off to war. I could not love thee so if I did not duty love more. The reason men love duty is because there's a purpose behind it. It's going to protect something. It's going to keep something. It's going to make something right. It's going to make something better. And here he says, you are the garden fountain, a well of flowing water streaming down from Lebanon. And that's the last verse we're going to read. And then she says, awake, O wind, and take the fragrance of my garden and blow it towards the one that I love. And then on their honeymoon, there's a verse in chapter 5 that most believe is attributed to God. And he says, drink your fill of love. Because this was his idea. It wasn't something that Solomon discovered. It wasn't something the Shulamite discovered. It was his idea. Back when Adam was alone and it wasn't good. This is his idea. And it's what he wants our homes to look like. He wants children to grow up in a home where the husband thinks the wife is the perfection of womanhood, and there is nothing that he won't do for her because she is his life-giving fountain. And there's nothing that she won't do for him because she knows that above all things in the world, his desire is for her. My dad used to say to us when we were kids, he would say, so do you guys want to get married after watching your mom and I? And I always said, well, of course. I mean, because my thought was, your marriage has nothing to do with me. I mean, but the truth is, it has a lot to do. Because here's what happens. We learn how to be people because of the family that we grew up in. We learn how to treat our wives, or how to treat our husbands, or how to treat our siblings, or how to treat our grandparents, or how to treat cashiers at 7-Eleven. We learn this because of our family of origin. They taught us how to be people. They taught us our values. And sometimes they taught us things that aren't so good. But here's what I want you to know. You are not destined to live the life your parents taught you. And I know they taught us a lot of good things, but you are not destined to repeat that. And we see it happen over and over. In fact, it happens in all sorts of silly ways. Like, when I was a kid, it used to drive me crazy that my parents could never find a car title. Like, how hard is this? You buy the car, you take the title, you put it someplace where you won't forget it. Every time, where's the title? It's got to be on the box on top of the refrigerator. So I grow up and I'm thinking, that's never going to happen to me. Guess what? I don't know where my car titles are because I put them in a place. You know, I have a drawer. Oh, maybe they're in that other thing. These things that happen. But I say you are not destined to live that out because God has adopted you. He's brought you into his family. See, he says, I know that the family you came from, and I love that family, but now you're my daughter. Now you are my son. And I will teach you my ways, because there's a new family culture that you need to adopt to now. And this is what marriage looks like in God's family. That's what it looks like. And so wherever yours doesn't quite look like that, yours is wrong. Not trying to be mean, just telling you. Yours is wrong. This is what his looks like. And there's a guy, I can't remember his name, but he wrote a book, Emotionally Healthy Spirituality, and he says that all of us grew up in a family, and if we took time to think, we could write out the 10 commandments of our family. Because we all grew up with commandments, like commandment number 1, thou shalt not upset dad at any cost. Commandment number 2, whatever happens in the house stays in the house. Commandment number 3, when mom starts crying, whatever you have to do, just calm her down. Commandment number 4, well, God gives us a new list of commandments. He gives us a new heart. He gives us the mind of Christ. He gives us his Spirit to enable us to do these things, because this is what we were created for. We are not destined to live the lives that we learned in this world. We have been predestined for something much greater. Let's pray. Father, thank you so much for the gifts that you give, and thank you for love and beauty. And I just pray that your church, your bride, that you take these broken hearts, you take these hurt minds, these damaged souls, and you pour your love out. And we know your love, that it becomes deep within us, that we don't wonder if you love us. We don't have anxiety and fear and say, well, maybe God doesn't love me. But we learn that your love is constant. You are glorious and you are good, and you sent your son to buy back what was given away. You sent your son to restore and to redeem. And so I pray that you help us live this new life in your family, God, because you are our Father. In your name, Jesus, we pray. Amen.